Hello, guys. I wanted to talk with you a little bit about. This is going to be not really a news related video, or this one's going to be more about media, but more specifically, uh, the media that I consume. Um, I will say out front that the majority of the media I consume is what you would call alternative left media, like kind of independent leftist media. Um, I'll say right out front that I really have been, I'll say for about 7 years, a little over 7 years now, I've been what you would call maybe politically conscious, politically aware, um, to the extent that I think someone who is watching political content on a daily basis would be. Um, so, and it started with a show called Secular Talk. So, Secular Talk, Kyle Kalinske, I have to credit him um, for introducing me to political content in a way that interested me, in which it hadn't interested me before. Now, at that time, I was irritated with it was early in the Trump presidency, and I was hearing a lot of bad press about Trump, and I wasn't a fan of what I was hearing. I didn't enjoy what I was hearing, and I felt, oh, well, I may have voted for Trump in 2016, but I really didn't know that much about him. Most of why I voted for Trump was because I thought it was funny and because I was pretty checked out of politics altogether. Prior to 2016, I had never voted before. I could have voted in 2012, but I chose not to because I really just didn't care who won in 2012. But 2016, I thought it was funny, the idea of Trump winning and becoming president, but I really wasn't that informed. So at that time, in 2017, I started watching Secular Talk, and I thought that was pretty interesting. I found that his content was a little bit... his content has shifted quite a bit over the years, as I would imagine most people's content does. And so that's kind of how I started getting into politics. After following Secular Talk, I started following the Jimmy Dore show shortly after that. There was other content I suppose I was aware of, like at that time there was the Humanist Report, the Tim Black podcast, Tim Black Wolfpack, something like that, that I was following. I had been familiar with TYT for some time. Like, I had heard of TYT all the way back in 2010. I was familiar with TYT, but wasn't a regular viewer. So, but at this point in 2024, I'll say that there's, I'll say here are some of the people who I pay attention to. Now, the top people that I like the best to this day, the people whose opinions I'm generally more trustworthy of, those would be, I'd say number one would be Glenn Greenwald. I find his reporting very informative and left, but he doesn't make a big fuss over identity politics, and he is side of free speech and issues. And I would also say, and I like the length of his programming. I like that I can turn on one of his episodes and it's like an hour and a half, so I can just plow my way through it while I'm on a run or something. I don't have to keep tuning in and picking episodes. So Glenn Greenwald, his content is really good. I also like Russell Brand. I was introduced to Russell Brand maybe 3 years ago, and I have to say his relevance has come up a lot more rapidly recently. Glenn Greenwald has a journalistic history. I believe he founded The Intercept back in the day before leaving it in 2020 over their coverage of the Hunter Biden laptop story. But Russell Brand, his involvement in politics was much more recent, and I really wasn't familiar with his video content up until like maybe 2020, and 21 I started following his content more. I like the Jimmy Dore Show is probably the show that I watch the most. I don't find that I agree with Jimmy Dore as much as I would agree with Glenn Greenwald or Russell Brand, but Jimmy Dore, I like his fiery, aggressive energy, and I'll say of all the shows I watch, I've probably watched Jimmy Dore more than the rest of them. Just in pure amount of time I've watched the content, I've watched more Jimmy Dore than any other political type of show to this day, and kind of the center of gravity of the political content I consume would be the Jimmy Dore Show. Two channels that I've been listening to more recently, but I have found myself enjoying their content and have subscribed recently. That would be Do Dissidents, which is these two Jewish guys who talk a lot about politics, and I appreciate their takes on most stuff. Say I enjoy Hard Lens Media. Hard Lens Media is probably the least known of the shows, but Hard Lens Media and Do Dissidents, they have fairly small audiences compared to the other ones. I think Glenn Greenwald, Russell Brand, Jimmy Dore, they're all pretty big as far as subscribers go. Do Dissidents and Hard Lens Media are lesser known, but I still find their content worthwhile. I have been enjoying Do Dissidents and Hard Lens Media. Let's see, there's Sally Sabs, this black woman. She's, I don't know much about her content that much, but I've been tuning into her show from time to time recently. She seems to be kind of on board. You see, I think she seems to be kind of on board with this. There was kind of a civil war in the independent leftist space. So there was a time when I think it was early 2021, late 2020. So there was this issue with Force the Vote that Jimmy Dore was pushing during 2020, and Jimmy Dore was saying we need to Congress in order to push a floor vote for Medicare for All during the pandemic. So there was a split within the Jimmy Dore Show, and like shows like TYT. It's important to also remember that a lot of these shows, particularly Secular Talk and the Jimmy Dore Show, were started on TYT. Now, Secular Talk and the Jimmy Dore Show are two of the shows that I have the most history with, that I've watched the most over the years. And although I've gravitated more and more towards the Jimmy Dore Show over the years, so there's Sally Sabs, I'm not that familiar with. Do Dissidents, who I'm not that familiar with, and Hard Lens Media as well. But I picked up some of those channels. So I would also add Breaking Points. Breaking Points has pretty good content overall. I find myself agreeing with Sagar quite a bit more than Crystal. I've been following them since 2020 as well, to one extent or another, although they changed their network. They used to what is it? The Hill. They used to be on the Hill, and then they created their own channel, and they're pretty good. They're a pretty good show. They're not quite as gung ho about. There's a little bit more nuance and there's a little bit more debate on ideas on that show. There's Crystal and Sagar, and then there's Ryan and Emily. They're all kind of involved in the show to one degree or another, although it's mostly Crystal and Sagar's show. So there's some nice difference of opinion and debate on that show that you don't get with some of the others, where it's just one person in the show. Breaking Points is pretty good, but they're just a little. They're afraid to really go there on certain topics. They just don't. They're not as aggressive, or they try to play. They try to play like right down the middle in a lot of ways. Sometimes I'll watch Tucker Carlson. Sometimes I will. Like when Tucker Carlson has a good interview, I'll listen to Tucker Carlson. I find that he's one of the few. Like he's probably the voice on the right that I would give the most credibility to, that I would say has a good deal of credibility. I don't agree with Tucker on everything. I don't agree with any of these guys on everything. I would say, let's say here, Matt Walsh I've tuned into from a time or two. He has some interesting opinions. He gets into the culture war stuff, which is not usually my cup of tea, but sometimes when I'm in the mood for some culture war stuff, I'll tune into Matt Walsh. And then lastly, I'll mention TYT, the Young Turks, and Sam Cedar. When I need political perspectives that are quite a bit outside of my own, you're more unabashedly pro-leftist and like more establishment leftist content, I will go with like TYT or Sam Cedar. Although I think TYT is still a better program, so those are kind of the ones that I tune into from time to time. Really the ones I tune into the most would have to be Glenn Greenwald, Russell Brand, Jimmy Dore, and more lately and I do listen to quite a bit of Secular Talk and Breaking Points as well, but I do so with a grain of salt because I've been drifting kind of away from Secular Talk and Breaking Points over the last 3 or 4 years. I found their content to be a little bit outside of my own perspective. I tune into them from time to time because I understand their relevance, but shows like Due Dissidence, Hard Lens Media, Sally Sabs, I've been more interested lately in. Tucker Carlson's had some interesting work since he's gone out on his own. Now, the thing that I will say is that despite all this different content, it's still mostly leftist, economic leftist, anti-authoritarian, but also kind of socially in the middle content. Like none of this is like what you would call socially leftist content. It's mostly economically leftist content, except for like Tucker Carlson and Matt Walsh. Those guys are the only real conservatives, and when I mean conservative, I mean people who are both economically both economically conservative and socially conservative. Everyone else on that list is economically leftist, and also more socially down the middle / leftist, not socially moderate, you might say. But some of the shows that I've been enjoying more have been kind of drifting a little bit more to the right on social issues while maintaining their economically leftist ideals, which is kind of where I am, being someone who's more economically leftist and more socially conservative. So that's kind of a upfront approach, kind of where I consume my media. It's important as I communicate with you guys and give my perspectives, that you kind of know where I'm primarily getting my perspectives. So I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.